Srimad Bhagavatam Swami Maharaj. All right. To the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru, Shri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatam Vyasam Tito Jayam Hridayat Nasta Preshravadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Today is December 9th, 2025, and we are reading Canto 4, Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 31. Narada instructs the Prachetas, and we're doing verse 1. So we are starting a new chapter. I think this is like my first time starting a new chapter, so I'm excited. Yeah, and it's also the last chapter of the fourth canto. So once we finish this, we get to start the fifth canto.
We started the fourth canto when Vanessa came.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's amazing. It's been a wonderful journey. There's so much nectar in the fourth canto. All right, let's do this. Text 1. Maitreya Vacha
Maitreya Vacha
Tata Utpana Vikyana
Tatrupana Vijnana
Ashvaroksha Japashitam
Ashvaroksha Jashitam
Smaranta Atmaje Bharyam
Marta Atmajayavyam
Vishrajya Prajan Grihat
Vishraja Pravajandriya
Maitreya Vacha
Maitreya Vacha
Tata Utpana Vikyana
Tatrupana Vijnana
Ashvaroksha Japashitam
Ashvaroksha Jashitam
Smaranta Atmaje Bharyam
Marta Atmajayavyam
Vishrajya Pravrajan Grihat
Vishraja Pravajandriya
Tata Utpana Vikyana
Tatrupana Vijnana
Ashvaroksha Japashitam
Ashvaroksha Jashitam
Smarantatmaje Bharyam
Marta Atmajayavyam
Vishrija Pravrajan Grihat.
Vishraja Pravajandriya
Okay, please chant. Maitreya Vacha Tata Upana Vigyana Ashvaroksha Japashitam Smarantatmaje Bharyam Vishrija Pravrajan Grihat.
Tata Utpana Vigyana
Tata Upana Vigyana
Ashvaroksha Javashita
Ashvaroksha Japashitam
Smaranta Atmaje Varyam
Smarantatmaje Bharyam
Vishrija Pravrajan Griha
Vishrija Pravrajan Vihat.
Tata Upana Vigyana
Tata Upana Vigyana Ashvaroksha Japashitam Smarantatmaje Bharyam Vishrija Pravrajan Grihat. Maitreya Vacha
Tata Utpana Vijnana
Tata Upana Vigyana
Ashvaroksha Jashitam
Ashvaroksha Japashitam Smarantatmaje Bharyam Vishrija Pravrajan Grihat. Maitreya Vacha Vigyana Ashvaroksha Japashitam Smarantatmaje Bharyam Vishrija Pravrajan Grihat. All right, word for word. Maitreya Vacha. Maitreya said, Tata, thereafter, Utpana, developed, Vijnana, possessing perfect knowledge, Ashu, very soon, Hokshaja, by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhajitam, what was enunciated, Smaranta, remembering, Atmaje, son, Bharyam, their wife, Vishrija, after giving, Pravrajan, left, Grihat, from home. Translation by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The great Saint Maitreya continued. After that, the Prachetas lived at home for thousands of years and developed perfect knowledge and spiritual consciousness. At last, they remembered the blessings of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and left home, putting their wife in charge of a perfect son. Please repeat. The great Saint Maitreya continued.
The great Saint Maitreya continued.
After that, the Prachetas
After that, the Prachetas
lived at home for thousands of years
lived at home for thousands of years
and developed perfect knowledge and spiritual consciousness.
and developed perfect knowledge and spiritual consciousness.
At last, they remembered the blessings of the Supreme Personality of Godhead
At last, they remembered the blessings of the Supreme Personality of God
and left home,
and left home,
putting their wife in charge of a perfect son.
putting their wife in charge.
Okay, purport. After the Pracheta, their penances, they were blessed with the personality of Godhead. The Lord blessed them by telling them that after finishing their family life, they would return home, back to Godhead, in due course of time. After finishing their family life, which lasted thousands of years according to the calculations of the demigods, the Prachetas decided to leave home, putting their wife in charge of a son named Daksha. This is the process of Vedic civilization. In the beginning of life, as a brahmachari, one has to undergo severe penances and austerities in order to be educated in spiritual values. The brahmachari, or student, is never allowed to mingle with women and learn from the beginning of life about sex enjoyment. The basic flaw in modern civilization is that boys and girls are given freedom during school and college to enjoy sex life. Most of the children are Varna Sankara, meaning born of undesirable fathers and mothers. Consequently, the whole world is in chaos. Actually, human civilization should be based on Vedic principles. This means that in the beginning of life, boys and girls should undergo penances and austerities. When they are grown, they should get married, live for some time at home, and beget children. When the children are grown up, the man should leave home and business. In this way, one can make one's life perfect by going home to the kingdom of God. Unless one practices penances and austerities in his student life, he cannot understand the existence of God. Without realizing Krishna, one cannot make his life perfect. The conclusion is that when the children are grown, the wife should be put in charge of the children. The wife should be put in the children's charge. The husband may then leave to develop Krishna consciousness. Everything depends on the development of mature knowledge. King Prachini Barishat, the father of the Prachetas, left home before the arrival of his sons, who were engaged in austerity within the water. As soon as the time is ripe, or as soon as one has developed perfect Krishna consciousness, he should leave home, even though all his duties may not be fulfilled. Prachini Barishat was waiting for the arrival of his sons, but following the instructions of Narada, as soon as his intelligence was properly developed, he simply left instructions for his ministers to impart to his sons. Thus, without waiting for their arrival, he left home. Giving up a comfortable home life is absolutely necessary for human beings and is advised by Prahlad Maharaj. Hitvatma patam griham anta kupam. To finish the material, leave his so-called comfortable home life, which is for killing the soul, atma patam. The home is considered to be a dark well covered by grass, and if one falls within this well, he simply dies without anyone's caring. One should therefore not be too much attached to family life, for it will spoil one's development of Krishna consciousness. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gnanajana Shalakaya Chaksharam Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakaram Mayam Darati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapadakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamstra Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Savadetam Savadutam Parijana Savitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shiva Shakamatam Shah. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jakapato Gajrakapate Gopesha Gopeka Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishubhano Sutidevi Brahma Prananami Hari Priya Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasani Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay. All right. So we're starting this new chapter, and the Prachetas, which are the 10 sons of King Prachinivari, they were sent to perform austerities. He told them to go perform austerities, and then they met Lord Shiva, who instructed them in devotional service and really inspired them with his beautiful prayers. And so then they went under the water and they meditated and did austerities for 10,000 years. And then to see the Lord face to face, Lord Vishnu came. And he blessed them by telling them they were going to live a very happy and enjoyable life, and then return back to him later. He also instructed them on how, to do devotional service, right? So, and so now they're fulfilling their duty, their absolute duty, and it is a duty to go deeper into their devotional service. And so this is the ideal family, because we're not meant to stay in the, very comfortable bosom of our family, for until we die, right? Although so many people think that's the ideal, but end portion of our life for spiritual realization, and our whole life should really be set up to facilitate this. And so one point in the purport that I really like. So we know the general progression, right? There's brahmachari, the celibate student life, and the point that I really liked about that was that there's some austerity in that life, right? There's austerity at the beginning of life, at the end of life, and then in the middle, right? And this idea so much in our society, so much children are spoiled, they can be spoiled. Like, let's just give them everything that they want, make everything, make them think like, oh yes, I have everything I need. I have it, and everything I want, I can also get that. And then when they become an adult, it's quite a difficult transition, right? Because now suddenly they have to realize, oh my gosh, you know what? Somebody has to buy the toothpaste, and that somebody's me. Somebody has to do this. Somebody has to do the dishes. And so that we end up with kind of a generation of adults that are sort of unprepared for adult life. This is certainly not the case, across the board, but it is very common. I mean, I've seen it, and that's because we're not really training our children properly for spiritual life. And so if we start this at the beginning of life, then it becomes very natural for them to at the end of life, pursue those spiritual pursuits. And that austerity that hopefully you could give your children, and by austerity I don't mean, don't be don't be smacking your kids, don't be making them do heavy fasting or anything like that, but just like by making them understand that everything belongs to Krishna, right? And by the austerity of not, it's very common when I was growing up. It was expected basically that you would start dating when you're a teenager, and that was very normalized, and it was even, although it was somewhat frowned upon, it was sort of expected that you would begin sex life also as a teenager. And so these are the austerities that we should kind of be telling our children. This is not the ideal, right? We don't want you to start dating at 16 years old and have, so many relationships and sexual partners before you ultimately get married. And that's not a recipe for a healthy society. And so by austerities for our children, I'm certainly not meaning, smacking them around, making them go, do heavy fasting or spending every night, studying intensely scriptures. No, but just educating them in the truth that everything belongs to Krishna, and that we should be preserving ourselves, for our future spouse, and that was something that was not taught to me. It was not taught to, pretty much any of the other girls that I know. There was something that maybe was said in offhanded comments, but by example was certainly not taught. So, and so anyway, this austerity that we would have at the beginning and the end of our lives helps us to understand and to actually see Krishna. And this is an example I've used many times, but it's such a good one, at least from my life, is that when I finally stopped eating meat, suddenly I was able to see that, Krishna was in all living entities, right? And so when you're kind of eating meat, it's almost necessary to sort of forget that, right? Because you're eating these other beings, and you don't need to, right? You're not going to die if you don't eat them, and so when I stopped eating meat, suddenly I find myself, avoiding stepping on ants on the sidewalk. Suddenly I'm thinking about the ants on the sidewalk, right? Whereas before I didn't even think about them. It wasn't that I tried to step on them. I just wasn't really conscious of it. And then when I finally gave up eating meat, I realized, no, these ants are just doing whatever, their ant business is that day, and why should I not attempt to go around them, and so this austerity, it actually allows us to be able to see Krishna in every living entity, and to actually understand. But austerity itself is not, an indication of being self-realized. And I think some people mistake that, where they think, oh, am I offending you, Prabhu? This is going further and further away. But yeah, austerity doesn't necessarily mean that you're self-realized. And I think sometimes people will think, oh yes, this person, they're so austere, they're sleeping on the floor, they're only eating, one small meal a day, oh, they must be so advanced. But that's not always the case. Or alternately, someone might think, oh, this person, they live a very opulent life, they can't possibly be advanced. And there's a great example of this in Chaitanya Lila, right? And with Punjarak Vijayanidhi, right? He was very opulent. He had, the finest clothes and a beautiful place to live, and so, one might have thought that he wasn't a great devotee, but when he heard the name of the Lord, he suddenly went into ecstasy, right? And so. So all this austerity is a tool. It's a tool to help us get closer to Krishna. And so it's important to remember that. Huh?
Similarly, there's the milk drinking brahmachari who was.
Yeah, please tell that story. Yeah, that's a great
story. He was drinking a cup of milk a day. He tried to get into the kirtan. She lost that course back to the kirtan. How much of the time he was trying to chant, he said, there's something wrong here, I'm not feeling ecstasy, someone's here that's not supposed to be here. And the guy came out, the furniture guy came out, Lord Chaitanya dragged him out, said, get out of here, I want to see your face. Later on, Lord Chaitanya said, you can just leave me by drinking milk.
Yeah, I mean, and that, yeah, that's a great example too. I wish I had totally thought of that. I've always loved that story. Did you have something? Yeah.
We're just reading Bhagavatam, you shouldn't try to, not eat enough.
Yeah.
Because it just increases, you're starving, you eat more. So
Yeah.
it says Krishna Prasad.
Well, and then you're preoccupied with that too, right? Like, and that's the whole game, right? If you're artificially, renouncing from various things, including eating, then if that's not a true renunciation, you're just going to be thinking about, oh my gosh, I'm so hungry, and so then it's not helping you think more of Krishna. It's actually helping you think more of, yourself and cake or whatever. And so yeah, and so it's very important to have a balanced approach to these austerities and to do them with the proper motivation, because it is a tool to help us, but it can also be the opposite and be a hindrance, right? Especially if you become so puffed up because you think, oh yes, I'm so austere, I'm only eating one small bowl of rice a day, and I'm sleeping on the floor, and oh yes, everybody can see how austere I am. I mean, that becomes a real hindrance, a stumbling block for our progress in spiritual life. And so this purport, it talked about kind of in the ideal life, the progression, right? We have brahmachari, you're a celibate student, then you have grihastha life, family life. Then they didn't mention this, but there's the vanaprastha stage, which is kind of you're starting to detach from family life, and focus more on spiritual pursuits. And then after that, sannyas, where you would leave home, and this is when the man would leave home and completely dedicate himself to devotional service. And this is the ideal life. But I did want to point out that it's not always possible in this day and age, right? Nor is it always practical in this day and age. Especially, in the purport, it talks about, the husband leaving home and then the wife being taken care of by her adult children. And in so many families that I know, this would just not be possible to do, right? Because of all sorts of reasons, finances, because of family estrangement, right? Because of illness. And so I think it's important to not get hung up on this. I think also sometimes people think, oh, this is very harsh. This is a very hard thing to just, abandon your family. It's more important to strive for Krishna consciousness as an individual and as a family together, right? And you want to, if you can remember this one principle, I think you generally will not go wrong, and that's you want to accept what is favorable for your progression in Krishna consciousness, and you want to reject what is unfavorable. And so we should detach from family affairs to pursue spiritual life. But whether you're able to do that or you're not able to do that, you should still be pursuing spiritual life. And Srila Prabhupada has said multiple times that it's actually not even necessary if you have a helpful wife at home, right? So let's see here is, so this, Srila Prabhupada said this in a letter in 1967. He says, one who has got a helpful wife at home does not require to accept sannyas. If required, both you and your husband can preach Krishna consciousness combinedly. We are concerned more for Krishna consciousness, and if that work is executed more nicely by the cooperation of husband and wife, there is no necessity of thinking wife as an impediment to Krishna consciousness. And then this one is from the 4th canto, from the purport. Srila Prabhupada says, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had both a good mother and a pleasing wife, and he was very happy at home. Nonetheless, for the benefit of the whole human race, he took sannyasa and left both his mother and his wife. In other words, it's essential that one have both a good mother and a wife in order to become perfectly happy at home. Otherwise, home life has no meaning. Unless one is religiously guided by intelligence and renders devotional service under the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his home can never become very pleasing to a saintly person. In other words, if a man has a good mother or a good wife, there is no need of his taking sannyas. That is, unless it is absolutely necessary, as it was for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So I brought up those quotes because I don't want people to really get hung up on that, right? Because the way that our society is structured is quite different than the Vedic society, and so it's not always practical or possible for us to follow that progression very strictly, right? But the important thing is that we are doing devotional service, that we are making progress in spiritual life. And for a lot of people, it's much easier to make that progress when they are still in their family relationship. So I'm just saying, don't get too hung up on that. But at the same time, we have to realize that when we're raising our children, that we really need to instruct them of what the actual purpose of life is. And that's actually what the role of human, or what the role of a parent is. Because right now our society is so chaotic, right? There's so much violence, there's so much animosity just floating around out there. Our society is having so many problems. And a lot of it can be boiled down to the fact that children were not created properly, right? What does Srila Prabhupada say in the purport? He says, the basic flaw in modern civilization is that boys and girls are given freedom during school and college to enjoy sex life, and most of the children are varna sankara, meaning born of undesirable fathers and mothers. Consequently, the whole world is in chaos, right? And so we can see this. It's not difficult to see, and that's because so many parents are forgetting what is the actual, or they don't know what is the actual role of a parent. So in the 5th canto, in the 5th canto, it says, one who cannot deliver his dependents from the path of repeated birth and death should never become a spiritual master, a father, a husband, a mother, or a worshipable demigod. So right there, that tells us what the role of these, what a father, husband, a mother, spiritual master, a worshipable demigod, the role of that person is to deliver his dependents from the cycle of birth and death. So Srila Prabhupada has also made some comments about raising children. So let's see, here's one. Okay. Everyone naturally gets a father and mother at the time of birth, but the real father and mother are those who can release their offspring from the clutches of imminent death. This is possible only for parents advanced in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, any parents who cannot enlighten their offspring in Krishna consciousness cannot be accepted as a real father and mother. And so the following verse from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu confirms the uselessness of serving ordinary parents. I'm just going to read the translation. It says, one should perform One should perform only those activities, either worldly or prescribed by Vedic rules and regulations, which are favorable for the cultivation of Krishna consciousness. So that kind of goes back to that principle that you really shouldn't forget, which is accept what's favorable and reject what's unfavorable. And also, I want to point out, we can only instruct our children so far, and then at some point it's up to them to pick it up, right? And so, you can do your duty as a parent, but be detached from the results, right? And that's what we can do. So, okay. Yeah, and so we can see the role of the true purpose of parentage is to show the child to get out of that cycle of birth, old age, disease, and death. So Srila Prabhupada said in this purport to leave even if you haven't completed all your duties, right? And this is what King Prachini Bari did. He left. He was waiting for his children to come back after they had completed their austerities. But under the instruction of Narada Muni, he realized, okay, once his knowledge was perfected, then he should just leave and go and pursue spiritual life. And so he left, which did cause all the trees to sort of take over the world, which really upset the Prachetas when they came back. But even though he didn't complete his duties by waiting for his sons to come back, he left. And why is that? Do you know why? Anybody? Why is that? Why did he leave even though he didn't complete his duties? Huh?
Because he was convinced by Narada Muni
Yeah, what was he convinced of?
that he was going to go to hell and all the dark well.
Yeah. Well, and he was convinced that that's what the actual what his actual real responsibility is, right? His ultimate responsibility, his ultimate the ultimate duty of everyone, right, is to become spiritually realized. And so so he went for that. That's what makes our life successful, is if we're able to realize have that spiritual realization and make that progress towards getting back home, right? Back home to Krishna. But what I find interesting is he said, make sure, hold on. We want to make sure that our intelligence is properly developed. So let's see. In the purport it says, the husband may then leave home to develop Krishna consciousness. Everything depends on the development of mature knowledge. King Prachini Barishat, the father of the Prachetas, left home before the arrival of his sons, who were engaged in austerity. As soon as the time is ripe, or as soon as one has developed perfect Krishna consciousness, he should leave home, even though all his duties may not be fulfilled. Right. And so I think a really important point is to make sure that we are properly developed in our Krishna consciousness, right? We want to make sure that our intelligence is there before we can really devote ourselves in such an austere way to spiritual life. And for most of us, this can take our entire life, right? This can take sometimes many lifetimes, right? And so one example that this made me think of is Maharaj Bharata, right? He did exactly what he was supposed to do, right? He left his kingdom and dedicated his life to spiritual pursuits. But then what happened? He wasn't quite completely prepared, right? Because he had this idea that he could sort of do it alone, right? And so his knowledge wasn't 100% there, and so he fell down when he became attached to that deer. But that's okay, because there's no loss on this path. And so although he then had to take a deer body, he, in that deer body, was able to remember everything and prepare his knowledge, prepare his intelligence to then, in his next life, to actually do it successfully. And so in that life, although he didn't, go off to the forest, he did in a metaphorical sort of way, by pretending he was, pretending he was an idiot, right? And so people would just kind of leave him alone. So he was in a proverbial forest, and that allowed him to really dedicate himself to spiritual life, and to just thinking about Krishna without all the demands that society would normally place on you if he had presented himself as a person of normal intelligence. The demands of family and stuff like that. So how do we develop that perfect knowledge? This one's pretty easy. How about you, Chandrika? How do we develop the perfect knowledge? Yeah.
Be steady, in understanding, to do it, basically to follow everything in a very steady way and to focus and not to be distracted.
Yeah, we do that. Yeah, and we study Srila Prabhupada's books. We take instruction from our spiritual master, and then from the other devotees, right? And that all helps us develop this knowledge, so that at the end of our lives, because this is what we're training for. We're training for our whole lives for that end time in our life, so that we can be focused on Krishna, right? And so if we read Srila Prabhupada's books and we follow the instructions of our spiritual master and the instructions of Srila Prabhupada, then we're developing that perfect knowledge, right? So that when we, at that moment, at the end of our life, we're able to remember Krishna. And we just, go back home. That'd be beautiful. And so there's a couple more examples of this kind of ideal, this Vedic ideal. There's tons of examples of this in the Bhagavatam, but I was thinking of King Rishabhadev, right? He instructed his sons first, and then he left. And he also didn't necessarily go to a forest, but he kind of went to a proverbial forest where he left and he became an avadut, right? And everybody just thought he was just mad. But really, he was able to really focus on the Lord then. Of course, we have Dhruva, which, we talk about Dhruva a lot, but Dhruva, he was very little. He was very young, right? He didn't wait till the end of his life. And he left to the forest to become self-realized. We have Kardama Muni, and he left Devahuti after he had his 9 daughters, and then one son, which was Lord Kapila, right? He left Devahuti in the care of Lord Kapila, who then very nicely instructed his mother. She had so many beautiful questions to ask him. And of course, he was the Supreme Lord himself. So he was especially equipped to answer her questions. And so maybe you guys could think if there's any other examples from the literature that you can think of that have followed this ideal. And then in review, we'll just say that the main things I want you to remember from this class is that at the end of our life, we should find some way to dedicate ourselves to these spiritual pursuits, which most of us are already doing this. So, but we can always go deeper, right? And so we should just kind of gradually be going deeper and deeper. And then to accept what's favorable and reject what's unfavorable to that goal, right? To go deeper. And so for some, that might mean, leaving your family, and going out on your own. And for someone else, that might mean to stay with your family and continue, right? And so it's whatever is going to facilitate you focusing your life on Krishna, right? So is there any other examples anyone else can think of, or do you have any comments or questions? Anybody? Yeah.
I don't know if this answers your question, but Prabhupada says 99% of your advancement is association.
Yeah.
So that's what's so nice here. We have so many great Vaishnav devotee friends, and of course Sindhamani and beautiful. It's everything here. So that's like-minded people. Birds of a feather flock together.
Exactly, and like like Maharaj Bharat, right? His kind of downfall was that he didn't have that association, right?
Right.
And so he ended up, even though he was following the ideal, it didn't work the way it should have, because he was without that association.
Right, and he probably thought, I'm doing such a good thing, taking care of this dude, lost a mother, just sentimental, but you just can't do it alone.
Right. Yeah, it's so hard, and especially in this day and age, I mean, even just getting your basic needs met is very difficult to do, for most people if they don't, if they have, they're on a limited income, and so it would just be completely impractical to try to go it alone, right?
Yeah.
And there's not a big forest around here with fruits and things that you could live in. I mean, there's some cactus fruits and there's mesquite pods and things that you could eat, but it's not, for most people, a practical solution. So, yeah. Yeah, Kirtanishwara Gaurangadas.
It should be noted that in traditional Varnashram, only Brahmanas take sannyas. The Kshatriyas go up to the stage of Vanaprast. Everybody's a brahmachari. And everybody, well, not even the Sudras aren't brahmachari. Sudras should just get married, it's described.
Mm-hmm.
And Vaishyas could be brahmachari and married. Kshatriyas could go to Vanaprast, and then Brahmanas can take sannyas. So Devaki Mataji, in her book, she describes that Vanaprast is the ideal stage where most people in their life, that they're not necessarily taking sannyas, because most people aren't qualified for sannyas, but they may be married, but they're fully dedicated to spiritual activities, preaching or service, or they may be like, our spiritual master and renounced, but not sannyas, so to speak, traveling and preaching. So that's generally, for most people, that's the ideal. That's the end goal, is let us be in that position, not that everybody should think I'm going to take sannyas, because it's not such an easy thing. And then, you see that in the Bhagavatam too, with the Kshatriyas, like, Maharaj Yudhisthira, Arjuna, and Bhima. They were all Vanaprasthas at the end of life.
Right.
And they went out. And then actually, Draupadi followed them, but they were in a different mood. And then also Dhritarashtra left and Gandhari followed him. But in the sense of, you see that there are also individuals that are exceptional, like Rishabdev, who's the personality of Godhead, who did take sannyas. Even Dhruva also went to the forest. And usually the wife goes with them. We just heard about Vidarbhi and the king of Vidarbha. And she was there with him, So, but on the other side of things, you hear Kardama Muni, he did take full sannyas.
Right.
He was full out left, because he was also a Brahmana and was highly qualified from the beginning. So I just thought I'd make that point.
Yeah, and I think, I've heard many times, right, that in Kali Yuga, basically, we're all Sudras, right? So it's important to not think we're so high up that we're able to do these things.
Also, it should be noted that sannyas is not allowed in the Kali Yuga.
Yeah,
Sannyas is forbidden in the Kali Yuga, but the sannyas of the Vaishnavas is not like the sannyas of, the Bhagavatam, Satya Yuga time. The sannyas of the Vaishnavas is for the purpose of preaching. And that renunciation is natural for any devotee, that we can become advanced in our Krishna consciousness and become renounced. And that applies for brahmachari life too, that actually, brahmacharis never wore saffron.
mm-hmm.
Only in ISKCON and in the Gaudiya Math did brahmacharis wear saffron, because saffron is favorable for preaching.
Right.
And so in that way, it's always a sacrifice for preaching. Then Lord Chaitanya protects us. But artificial renunciation, artificial austerity for the purpose that's not preaching is basically a mode of passion. Like we do austerity in preaching. The austerity is that, you stay up late to preach, you wake up early to do good sadhana to preach, you take nice prasadam so that you can preach. This is the austerity. It's not that, I'm going to be austere and think that that's somehow an offering to Krishna. That's not what Krishna wants in this age. Austerity is natural. It comes in the course of our duty. Like we have Kshatriyas have austerities. They have to kill people in battle. But they also have, sometimes many wives. Brahmacharis have natural austerities to preach and go out and distribute books and wake up early, go to the temple, follow the program. So we all have different austerities. And we should just perform them enthusiastically and offer them to Krishna.
Yes, Ma'am.
There was a picture today in the ISKCON communications, worldwide communications, and it was Gauranga Das, who everyone knows is very respected, renounced, strict brahmachari. So he's in charge of the, some aspect, is in charge of the Govardhan Eco Village.
Mm-hmm.
So they were showing a retreat that they had. So he's surrounded by like 30 women. And there's one old guy, there's like one man that took the course and all these women.
Right.
And then he was flanked by, 2 other brahmacharis or 2 other men. And then there he was in the middle. So I was just laughing when I saw that because, he's actually such a great example of a brahmachari. But yet, if you look at that picture, you would think he was a sense
Right.
enjoyer. But that's the austerity, to run that program that's, got awards all over India and very famous and is wonderful for making devotees. But just a glance at it, it appears that he's enjoying with many, many women, all Western, of course.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, and that's why it's so important to really realize that these ideals, they're ideals, but they're not always practical, right? If he wasn't able to associate with any women at all, well, then all those women would not be able to start their journey to Krishna consciousness, right? So we want to do what's favorable for the preaching, so.
Not divided.
Yeah. Right. Well,
One of those brahmacharis from Govardhan Eco Village told me once, he said, the brahmachari ashram in Kali Yuga is not the brahmachari ashram. It's the rehabilitation center. It's an adult rehabilitation center. And he was saying, my first service as a brahmachari was, I was running a play and I was like trying out women for this dance for this play. So I was watching women dance all day. And that was my first service when I put on saffron, that I was in charge of this play and I was doing, tryouts and I was watching women dance all day. So,
yeah, there you have it.
he is a grihasta now, but
That's the point.
All right, Chandrika has one last thing.
So it's, we were saying that, association is important and everything. And, and I think it's good as young as possible to, get absorbed in Krishna consciousness, because you never know when your life's going to end and or if you're going to get ill or something like that. And I think that when it does get to the stage of people like elderly or, in infirm situations. I think as devotees, we've got to not only just look at ourselves and say, hey, what am I doing? But we need to be caring for others and looking out for others. And when others are becoming more vulnerable situations, they still need that association. They're still alive. They still need love. They still need Krishna consciousness. And I think that's where we're lacking a little, where we need to be thinking like what about this person that's in a nursing home that's sort of been
Right.
forgotten now? And, we need to be able to say, let's give some association here, because that is what is happening, is they're not getting that association, and they're getting a lot of, junk
Negative
coming into them.
association or
Yeah.
whatever, yeah,
So, and this could be any of us at any time. So.
yeah, yeah, that's important to remember, because association is so important. So we should give that association whenever we can.
Yeah, if any devotees can go to visit any of the devotees that are away. I know Chaitanya Rupa calls me sometimes and says, I miss the temple. He's just alone and things
Yeah.
like that. And so if there's anyone that can just think, hey, I have a spare, 20 minutes to
Yeah.
go visit or
Maybe they can,
go read,
they can contact you and find out the address and the,
Yeah, because then also you could bring a book and read, and then other people that are there can get the
Right.
benefit too.
Elmar and Alan go see Gangaya.
Nice.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's so fun having Nishwar Puri here.
Mhm.
You know,
right, Bhaktivinoda Srimad Bhagavatam ki.
Yeah, yeah.
Bhaktivinoda.